The rain hadn't stopped for 2 days straight. It beat against the tall windows of the Whitmore mansion like a warning no one wanted to hear. Inside, everything looked perfect. The polished marble floors, the golden chandeliers, the soft hum of classical music in the background. But beneath all that beauty, something was deeply wrong. Something that even the million-dollar paintings on the walls couldn't hide. Emma, the young maid, had been working there for only a few weeks. She was quiet, gentle, and always smiling, the kind of person who believed goodness could be found in everyone. But lately, she had started to notice things that didn't make sense. Locked doors that no one was supposed to lock. Footsteps in the hallway when everyone else was asleep. And the way the twins, little Ava and Liam, would go silent whenever the housekeeper, Mrs. Derns, entered the room. Mrs. Derns had worked for the Whitmores for over 10 years. She was strict, sharp-eyed, and cold as the winter wind that swept through the estate. She didn't smile often, and when she did, it never reached her eyes. Everyone in the house knew better than to cross her. Even the millionaire himself, Richard Whitmore, rarely questioned her decisions when it came to running the household. But what Emma didn't know, not yet, was that Mrs. Derns' control over the mansion ran far deeper than anyone realized. It started on a stormy evening when Richard had to leave for a last-minute business trip. The twins were asleep upstairs, and Emma had been asked to stay the night to help Mrs. Derns watch over them. It seemed simple enough, just a quiet night in a big house. But the moment Richard's car disappeared through the iron gates, the mood in the house changed. The music stopped, the lights dimmed, and Mrs. Derns' tone grew colder than ever. "Stay in your room," she had said. "The children don't need your help tonight." But Emma couldn't ignore the faint crying she heard coming from upstairs. She followed the sound to the twins' room, only to find Mrs. Derns standing in the hallway with a strange look on her face. Before Emma could speak, the housekeeper smiled that empty, unsettling smile and said softly, "You shouldn't have come up here." The next thing Emma remembered was the sound of a heavy door slamming behind her. The bathroom lights flickered as she realized where she was, locked inside with the twins. Panic rose in her chest. She tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. On the other side of the door, Mrs. Derns' footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading into the distance. "Why did she lock us in?" Emma whispered, pulling the frightened children close. But before either of them could answer, a soft creak came from behind the shower curtain. Something or someone was moving inside. And far away, somewhere beyond the storm, Richard Whitmore's car suddenly turned around. He had just received a call that changed everything. Emma's heart raced as she pressed her ear to the bathroom door, hoping to hear footsteps, any sign that Mrs. Derns might be coming back. But all she could hear was the steady drumming of the rain outside and the shallow breaths of the twins beside her. The bathroom felt smaller by the second. The pale light above the mirror flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the tile walls. "Ava, Liam, it's okay," Emma whispered, trying to sound calm. "We'll get out of here soon." The twins clung to her arms. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide and full of fear. "She gets angry," Ava whispered. "When Daddy's not here, she says we have to be quiet or bad things happen." Emma froze. "What do you mean, bad things?" she asked softly. But Ava only shook her head and buried her face against her shoulder. Liam didn't speak at all. He just kept staring toward the shower curtain. Emma hesitated, then slowly reached out and pulled it open. The curtain scraped along the rod, and for a moment she held her breath. Nothing, just a few towels hanging neatly and a basket of the twins' bath toys on the floor. Relief washed over her for a moment, until she noticed something strange near the drain. A small metal key, half hidden beneath a rubber duck. She picked it up, turning it over in her hand. It wasn't a normal bathroom key. It was older, heavier, like it belonged to one of the mansion's locked rooms. Her pulse quickened. Why would it be here? Outside the door, she heard a faint sound, the creak of a floorboard, slow and deliberate. She pressed a hand over the twins' mouths. Her own breath caught in her throat. Someone was standing just beyond the door. The shadow beneath it shifted once, then disappeared. Downstairs, the grandfather clock struck 10. Meanwhile, miles away on the rain-soaked road, Richard Whitmore's car sped through the darkness. His phone was still clutched tightly in his hand. The call had come from an unknown number, a child's voice, weak and trembling. "Daddy, please come home." Then the line had gone dead. His driver, Mark, glanced at him through the mirror. "Sir, are you sure something's wrong? It might have been a prank." "No," Richard interrupted sharply. "That was Ava. She's at home. She's supposed to be asleep." He leaned forward, his eyes dark with worry. "Turn around. Now." Back at the mansion, Emma was still trying to comfort the twins. The air felt heavy, almost charged. She tried the handle again, jiggling it with all her strength, but the door didn't move. Then, out of nowhere, the light above them flickered off completely. The bathroom plunged into darkness. Ava whimpered. Emma wrapped her arms around both children. "Sure, it's okay. Stay close to me." But in the dark, something shifted. A faint sound came from the air vent near the ceiling, like whispering. Emma looked up, her pulse hammering in her ears. For a moment, she thought it was just the wind. But then, clear as day, a low voice came through the vent. "Don't trust her." Emma froze. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The twins didn't move. The voice didn't answer. Somewhere deep inside the mansion, a door creaked open. Footsteps echoed again, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. And for the first time since she'd entered that house, Emma began to realize that Mrs. Stearns wasn't the only one hiding something. Emma held the twins tightly as the sound faded into silence again. Her heart was pounding so loudly she could barely hear her own breathing. The message, "Don't trust her," kept echoing in her mind. But who was her? Mrs. Stearns? Or someone else in the house? She looked toward the door again, her hands trembling slightly. The air inside the bathroom felt thick, like the walls themselves were listening. She crouched down beside the twins and tried to steady her voice. "Listen to me. We're going to be okay. But you have to tell me something. Has Mrs. Stearns ever locked you in before?" Ava shook her head quickly, but Liam hesitated. His small hand fidgeted with the edge of his shirt before he whispered, "Once, when we didn't finish our lessons." Emma felt a chill crawl down her spine. She had noticed before how strict Mrs. Stearns could be, but she had never imagined something like this. "And your father doesn't know?" she asked softly. Liam looked up at her with wide eyes. "She says Daddy's too busy. She says she's the only one who really cares about US." Emma's stomach turned. That same woman had smiled politely in front of Richard, always pretending to care, always looking so composed. But behind those calm eyes, there was something else, something darker. And now, with Richard gone, she had total control of the mansion. Meanwhile, Richard's car cut through the storm like a black arrow. The rain blurred the windshield as lightning flashed across the sky. He couldn't stop thinking about that call. Ava's voice had sounded terrified. He dialed a house number again, but no one picked up. He called Mrs. Stearns, still nothing. His worry turned into anger. "She knows better than to ignore my calls," he muttered, his jaw tightening. Back inside the mansion, Emma sat on the cold floor, trying to think. She turned the small metal key over in her hand again. If she could just figure out what it opened, maybe she could find a way out. She noticed a small cabinet near the sink, the kind built into the wall. She tried the key, and to her surprise, it clicked. Inside was a small black box covered in dust. Emma hesitated before opening it. Inside were old photographs, dozens of them. Some showed Mrs. Stearns standing with the twins when they were much younger. But there were others, too. Pictures of another woman, the twins' real mother. Emma frowned. Richard had never mentioned her, but she could tell from the photos that Mrs. Stearns had been close to her, too close. And in the last photo, the mother looked frightened. Her arm was around Ava as Mrs. Stearns stood in the background, her face half in shadow. Emma's heart raced. She had to get out and tell Richard. But before she could think further, she heard something, the slow creak of the doorknob turning. She froze, clutching the twins' hands. The door didn't open, but she could hear breathing on the other side. Then Mrs. Stearns' voice, calm, almost sweet. "Emma, you shouldn't have gone through my things." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Mrs. Derns's voice dropped lower, colder. "You wouldn't understand. Some promises are meant to be kept, even if they're buried." Footsteps moved away again, and Emma exhaled shakily. She turned toward the twins, her mind spinning. Promises? Buried? What had she meant by that? In the distance, thunder rolled. Richard's car had just reached the front gates. But as the headlights swept across the driveway, he noticed something strange. Muddy footprints leading toward the back of the mansion. And upstairs, in the flickering light of the bathroom, Emma finally realized the whisper through the vent hadn't come from the hallway at all. It had come from inside the walls. Emma pressed herself against the cold bathroom wall, holding the twins close as their quiet sobs filled the tiny space. The whispering voice from the vent still echoed in her ears. Don't trust her. She tried to steady her breathing, but each passing second made the tension in the mansion feel heavier, almost suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards above them, every rattle of the pipes, felt like a warning. Upstairs, the shadows shifted as Mrs. Derns moved with calculated calm. Emma could hear her soft, deliberate footsteps crossing the hallway. Outside the bathroom door, the house felt alive in a way that was almost terrifying. The storm rattling the windows, the wind howling to the tall trees, and the twins' anxious whispers blending with the echoing beats of Emma's own heartbeat. Richard's car had finally pulled into the driveway, the rain soaking him as he ran up the steps. His mind raced, going through every possibility. What if the call had been real? What if something had happened to Ava and Liam? He reached the front door, fumbled with the keys as the storm seemed to intensify, as if the house itself were warning him. Inside, Emma's eyes darted to the black box of photos again. Her hands trembled as she held them, realizing that there were patterns she hadn't seen before. Notes scribbled on the backs of some pictures, dates that didn't match, faces that didn't belong to anyone in the house. Mrs. Derns had been planning something for a long time, and now, with Richard away, the full extent of her control was terrifyingly clear. The bathroom door creaked, and Emma froze. A shadow moved just outside the cracked door frame. Mrs. Derns's voice, calm and chilling, said, "Emma, you've seen too much, and you don't belong here." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "I'm not leaving without them," she shouted, her voice trembling but firm. The twins clung to her, eyes wide with fear. Ava whispered, "She's gonna hurt us?" Outside the bathroom, the mansion's hallways seemed to stretch endlessly. Richard had entered the house, calling out their names, but the rain-drenched floors and echoing walls swallowed his voice. He could hear movement upstairs, faint but deliberate, and his instincts screamed that something was wrong. The sense of danger grew heavier with every step. Back in the bathroom, Emma turned the black box over in her hand, noticing a small folded note tucked beneath the photos. She carefully unfolded it, reading the words aloud in a whisper. "Some secrets are worth more than loyalty. Protect them at all costs." "What does that mean?" she muttered, clutching the twins. Before they could respond, a heavy knock rattled the bathroom door. The twins screamed softly, and Emma's heart thudded in her chest. The voice behind the door was now colder, sharper. "I warned you, Emma. Some things should stay hidden. The twins, they're not safe with you here." At that exact moment, Richard's footsteps reached the top of the stairs. His voice rang out through the hall, calling for Emma and the children. The mansion seemed to shiver with tension, as if it were holding its breath. Inside the bathroom, Emma's fingers found the small key again, and a dangerous thought crossed her mind. There might be another exit, a hidden passage she hadn't noticed. But just as she was about to move, the doorknob turned slowly. The storm outside intensified. Lightning struck close by, illuminating the bathroom in stark white light. Shadows danced along the walls, and Emma felt the weight of every secret in the house pressing down on her. Mrs. Derns's presence loomed just beyond the door, and for the first time, Emma realized how close the danger really was. And at the top of the stairs, Richard stopped. He could see the faint glow from the bathroom, the door slightly ajar, and heard a sound that made his blood run cold. The unmistakable voices of the twins, calling out for help. Richard's pulse quickened as he reached the top of the stairs. The bathroom door, slightly ajar, revealed the dim glow of flickering light. He could hear the twins' small voices trembling, calling out his name. He took a careful step forward, but something made him freeze. The air in the hallway felt wrong, thick and charged, like the house itself was warning him. Inside, Emma pressed herself against the wall, holding Ava and Liam tightly. She had almost made up her mind to try the hidden passage she had glimpsed in the bathroom tiles when the door swung open suddenly. But it wasn't Mrs. Derns who stepped in. It was someone else, a man, tall and unrecognizable, wearing a dark coat and a hood pulled low over his face. Who are you?" Emma stammered, clutching the twins closer. The figure didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small folder. "I think you need to see this," he said, his voice low but urgent. Before Emma could respond, he thrust the folder toward her and stepped back, just as a loud crash came from a hallway. Richard had reached the top of the stairs and froze when he saw the stranger. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp, full authority. The man ignored him, focusing on Emma. "There's no time to explain everything," he said. "But the housekeeper, she's not acting alone. Someone has been manipulating the Whitmore family for years. Look inside." Emma opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were papers, documents, notes, and photographs, showing Mrs. Derns meeting with unfamiliar men, planning schedules and recording events in the mansion. There were details about the twins' routines, their favorite toys, even medical records. One photograph made Emma's stomach turn. Mrs. Derns standing next to a man Richard had never met, both smiling as if sharing a secret. Richard stepped closer, peering over Emma's shoulder. "What is all this?" he asked, his voice tense. The stranger's eyes flicked toward him. "You need to know the truth, Mr. Whitmore. Your housekeeper isn't just controlling the children. She's protecting something bigger, something that could ruin your family." Emma felt the twins shivering in her arms. "Protecting what?" she asked softly. But the stranger didn't answer. Instead, he glanced toward the hallway again, his body tense, as if he sensed someone approaching. At that moment, the bathroom door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The twins screamed and Emma spun around, but the stranger had disappeared into the shadows. Richard rushed forward, trying to handle, but it was locked from the inside. From the other side, Mrs. Derns' voice echoed, calm but chilling. "Try to play detective, are we? Some truths are dangerous, even for you, Richard." Emma's hands shook as she realized the full weight of the situation. The house wasn't just under Mrs. Derns' control. It had become a trap, layered with secrets she hadn't imagined. And the stranger's sudden appearance had only made things more confusing. Who could she trust? Richard, the mysterious man? Or was everyone in the mansion hiding something? Thunder rattled the windows, and the lights flickered again. The twins clung to her, terrified, as Emma's mind raced for a plan. She had the key, the folder, and Richard just outside, but the danger was closer than ever. And then, from behind a locked bathroom door, a soft whisper echoed once more. "Not everything is as it seems, and someone in this house wants to make sure it stays that way." Emma froze. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, the tension thicker, and the realization hit her. The real threat wasn't just Mrs. Derns. It was something hidden in the shadows of the Whitmore mansion, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Richard slammed his shoulder against the bathroom door, finally forcing it open. The twins clung to Emma as she stepped back, shielding them instinctively. Mrs. Derns stood there, her calm demeanor cracked for the first time. Her eyes darted between Richard and Emma, and a flicker of panic passed across her face. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I was only trying to protect them." "Protect them from what?" Richard demanded, his voice echoing through the stormy house. Before she could answer, the stranger from before appeared in the doorway, stepping out of the shadows. He held a small device, one that seemed to control the security systems of the mansion. "She's been covering for someone," he said. "Someone who doesn't want the Whitmore family to know the truth about their fortune and the twins." Emma glanced down at the folder, remembering the photographs, the notes, the hidden documents. Everything made sense now. Mrs. Derns hadn't been acting alone, but her loyalty had been to the children all along, trying to keep them safe from outsiders who would use them to gain access to Richard's wealth. The tension in the room broke when Richard stepped forward, placing a protective hand on the twins' shoulders. "Emma, take them downstairs," he said firmly. "I'll handle this." The storm outside seemed to echo the drama inside as Richard confronted Mrs. Derns. She hesitated, then finally nodded, tears welling up at her eyes. "It's true," she admitted. They were being watched. People who want to control everything, your company, your family. They thought if they got to the children, they could manipulate you. The stranger moved closer, speaking urgently. "They're still here, waiting for the right moment. We need to secure the house and the twins, or it won't end well." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the mansion. Lights flashed, and hidden doors in the walls opened automatically, revealing secret passages that had long been unnoticed. The house, once a symbol of wealth and elegance, transformed into a labyrinth of hidden truths and shadowy corridors. Richard grabbed the twins and Emma, moving quickly towards safety, while Mrs. Derns followed, finally showing her true role as a protector rather than a villain. They reached the main hall just as a group of intruders tried to force their way in. The stranger, surprisingly skilled, managed to disable them with precise movements, proving he had more than just knowledge. He was a trained operative. Richard couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and disbelief. The twins were safe, and immediate danger had passed, but the full story of who had been manipulating the mansion was still only partially revealed. As the police sirens grew closer outside, Richard finally looked at Mrs. Derns. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I couldn't. Not until it was safe. I had to keep the twins safe, no matter the cost, even if it meant looking like the enemy." Richard sighed, overwhelmed but grateful. He hugged the twins tightly, and Emma wiped tears from their cheeks. For a moment, the storm outside felt like it had lifted, the tension in the mansion finally easing. Then, as everyone took a deep breath, the stranger held up the folder one last time. "There's one more thing," he said, flipping it open. Inside was a photograph of Richard, younger, standing next to a man he didn't recognize, smiling in a way that seemed familiar yet unsettling. Richard stared, realization dawning. The man in the photo had been part of a plan that went back decades, and somehow the roots of the danger had always been closer to home than he imagined. Emma looked at Richard, puzzled. "Who is he?" Richard swallowed hard. I think this is just the beginning." The mansion stood silent again, the storm outside finally ending, but a new layer of mystery lingered, a reminder that even in victory, some secrets refused to be fully uncovered. Richard sank into a chair in the grand living room. The twins nestled safely in Emma's arms. The storm had passed, leaving the mansion quiet except for the occasional drip of water from the roof. For the first time in hours, a sense of relief began to wash over him. The immediate danger had passed, and the children were safe. Emma sat beside him, her hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline, while Mrs. Derns stood quietly, no longer threatening, but exhausted from the tension she had carried for years. The stranger, whose name they now knew was Lucas, explained more about the hidden threats that had surrounded the Whitmore family. There had been people trying to manipulate the twins, leveraging their innocence to gain control over the Whitmore estate and business empire. Mrs. Derns had been protecting them, making sure Richard never suspected the truth until the time was right. Every harsh word, every strict rule, had been a shield, not cruelty. Richard listened, finally understanding the depth of her loyalty. Emma looked down at the twins, brushing a strand of hair from Ava's forehead. "You were very brave," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you both." The children smiled faintly, their fear slowly fading now that they understood they were protected. Liam clutched her hand tightly, a small gesture of trust and gratitude that made Emma's heart ache with relief. Richard took a deep breath and finally addressed Mrs. Derns. "I owe you an apology," he said softly. "I judged you without understanding. You saved them, and maybe even saved a family I didn't realize was in danger." Her eyes glistened as she nodded, accepting his words, her own burdens lifted in the honesty that had finally come to light. Lucas handed Richard the folder once more, this time full of actionable details, names, documents, and evidence to ensure that anyone who had threatened the family could be held accountable. Richard realized the importance of vigilance, but also of trust. The mansion had always been beautiful, but its walls now carried stories of courage, loyalty, and hidden dangers. He knew he could no longer take anything for granted, not the people closest to him, not the safety of his children, and certainly not the quiet elegance of the Whitmore estate. As the night settled, Emma tucked the twins into their beds for the first time without fear. Their small hands held hers as they drifted off to sleep, a testament to the resilience and innocence of children who had survived fear beyond their years. Richard watched from the doorway, gratitude and love filling him in ways he hadn't anticipated. The house, once filled with tension and secrets, now felt warmer, lighter, as if it too had finally exhaled. Before the night ended, Richard stepped into his study and looked once more at the photograph in the folder. The image of the man from decades ago still held a sense of mystery, a reminder that while the immediate danger was gone, the world held secrets that would always require caution, trust, and courage. It was a lesson Richard vowed to carry forward, that love and loyalty often hide behind shadows, and bravery comes in many forms, even in those we least expect. The Whitmore mansion finally settled into silence, the twins asleep, Emma at Richard's side, and Mrs. Derns quietly tending to her duties with a newfound purpose. Outside, the first light of dawn peeked through the clouds, washing the estate in a gentle glow. For Richard, Emma, and the children, it was the start of a new chapter, one where safety, honesty, and the strength of human bonds would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. And though mystery still lingered, for the first time in a long while, hope and trust had returned to the Whitmore home.